first session in July. And welcome to all our guests that are here today. We start our July, or we're going to start our, it isn't the first in July, we're still at one Sunday in June. We start our July series next week, and all of you have those, the list of what we're going to do in your mailboxes. It's also in all the, on the social media stuff, so you can pick it up there. We've got a good slate of things happening there. Today, we talk about a project, a dream, a vision, a roiling of the waters maybe, that's happening here in Buhler. Probably been a process of 2 years already. There's been talk by people in the community about how do we approach our brothers and sisters who are wanting to walk out, wanting to journey out of substance abuse. And we, of course, have heard within our own congregation our own stories of how that has happened. We've heard from at least 2 or 3 different people on that topic. And so today we want to take a step further down that journey. Within the last year, there's been this group, we call it the Blob. It sort of just came up out of Buhler. Concerned people who are visioning, are dreaming, what would it be like to minister to our brothers and sisters, have a place where we can minister together to our brothers and sisters who are wanting to get out of the bondage of substance abuse. That group has been meeting pretty regularly, very early in the morning, but luckily at Mojo's. And that group includes me, it includes Dwight Weedle, Bob Friesen from our congregation, Pastor Lynn Schlosser from Huffmansau, Claude Carpenter from the Methodist Church, Alden Dick from the Middle Church, John Yoder, who is here today as well. Joyce has been sitting in on those meetings. Daryl began sitting in those meetings, and his journey has taken a little different path. He stepped away from this work, but still supports it. And Phil Neufeld has been there as well as John Ratzlaff from the Middle Church. So those people are meeting together and dreaming. And we've met with city officials. We have talked through a variety of different circuits. And now we're at the point where we want to share the vision with you and see what your feedback might be. How might we walk together as we try to discern what our reality is for Buhler? In the process of discerning this, especially John Ratzlaff and I would say Dwight Weedle and John Yoder pushed us into relationship with David Case and Omega Project of McPherson. I was not familiar with that project, but am now. And the movement has been to talk to David and see what are the possibilities of expanding the program that's happening in McPherson into Buhler. And those talks have been good, and we're moving forward. And our next step in this part is to come and talk to you. Come and talk to our congregations about what does this look like? What is the program in McPherson? What stories come out of it? What might be the reality in Buhler? So, this morning we have David. We have several people from the Omega Project community. And David's wife is here as well. Welcome. Let's start in prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the way that you help us out. You sustain us. You walk with us. And even though it's uncomfortable many times, I thank you for the way that you prod us to move towards mission, to open our eyes, to see where it is that you're calling us to work. And even though it takes us to places that aren't comfortable economically, that aren't comfortable socially, places that we feel like we might not even have gifts to walk through, we thank you that you walk with us, and most of all that your Holy Spirit, your advocate, is always with us, always guiding, inspiring, and pushing us through the thick and the thin. Open our ears now to hear what we need to hear, our souls to react to your calling, our bodies to fully embrace the work that is needed. I ask that you open David's mouth to speak and everyone else that is here to share about your work in the Omega Project. We pray this in Christ's name. Amen. I welcome you to welcome them with a warm Buhler welcome. David.
Well, about 13 years ago at this time, I had a couple of young men who just kind of started, it's almost like they were yanking my sleeve saying, you need to start a halfway house. And I'm kind of like, why would I want to do that? To make it very short, by December 1st, we opened a halfway house. And it wasn't, people a lot of times, I tell them, if you're going to give credit, it doesn't belong my direction, because it's kind of been a God thing from the beginning, and I've been along for the ride, and more often than not, he's kind of drugged me and my wife kicking and screaming. It's kind of like, what? We're going to open a second house? Are you kidding? Etc. And so God's taken us on a journey that's been really unbelievable in terms of getting to know a group of people, work with them that I would have never imagined. It wasn't some grand vision that I had. It's been an obedience walk to Christ. And so we created this thing called the Omega Project that's no longer, it really is the equivalent of a Christian treatment program at this point. It's developed in some amazing ways. How do we even tell you what it is and how it is? And one of the things that I've found, the best thing is just to have you listen. And so we're going to let, Friday night I just said who wants to go and who wants to speak, and so we have whoever we have this morning. I didn't pick them, and I didn't tell them what to say. So I may have to duck after it's all over. No, I have confidence in what they're going to say. But they're going to share a little bit of their stories. We'll try to wrap it up in time so that you have a chance to ask some questions, and hopefully before the morning's over get a flavor for what's going on. And so we started off with Jason.
Good morning, church. You guys got a nice church here. I'm just going to start off. He told me to make it quick, so I'm going to jump around. I was addicted to methamphetamines. I'm going to leave it right there. November 11th, 2015, I walked into the Alpha House, which is the beginning house of Omega. I didn't trust anybody. I don't think I even trusted myself. However, Pastor Case was able to gain my trust, and we grew from there. I'm not saying it was easy, but we did grow. We went backwards and forwards, just like anything else that grows. And so I went from using methamphetamines every morning to looking at the Word. Jesus is what it's all about. For in the book of Luke somewhere it says, I said unto them, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one gets to the Father except by me. And I truly believe that. I live that every day. I graduated a couple years ago. I've got my own place. I still stay connected with everybody. It has totally changed my life. Through my addiction, I have a 21-year-old son that I hadn't seen in 11 years. We are now reunited. We eat dinner all the time together, and he's really a cool kid. I've been through a divorce. I gained the custody of my daughter. Now that's a struggle because she's 16, but we all love her. And however, it's all about God, and I love the way God works in everybody. He puts people in our places. One of our guys said, it's like playing chess, how you put places and it protects you and makes you move different directions. And I really like that analogy. And I end my day with, as for my house, we will serve the Lord. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Richie. I've been in the program since 2017. I come from a broken marriage. Nearly cost me my life. My drug of choice is alcohol. So through my destruction of that, I didn't look for my kids. I basically abandoned them. 3 years after that divorce, I ended up in Wesley Medical Center on a bad choice, nearly lost my life again. Supposedly woke up, I was on life support. My children were there, and I wrote a note saying I need help. I remember none of that. My brother Manny was in the program, so I reached out to him, and I met Pastor Case. And my first conversation with Pastor Case was, he told me, he goes, I told him, I said, I have a drinking problem. He goes, I think your heart's in the wrong place. And my first thought was, you have no clue where my heart is. But he did. When I got to the program, it was tough for me to actually sit down and want to believe what anybody had to say to me, because no one understood where I come from. But I was totally wrong. They did. I was surrounded by people that were just like me, just as broken and hurt and confused. I didn't think God wanted me. I didn't think he could save me for what I had done, what I had said, where I had been. The reality of it is a guy named Chris told me one time, he goes, you're who God came for. And I'm like, that's impossible. But as I got into the Bible, it was possible, because he didn't come for the kings and the queens and all the glorious people. He came for people just like me. So that made me turn even more to the Word. Now, I've been in the program 19 months. I serve God. I'm a leader at one of the houses for pastor. One thing I love to ask my people when they come in, they're brand new, what are you willing to give up to not be who you were no more? And 90% of them say everything. And I tell them, remember that, because God's probably going to ask you to do that. Some of them don't like to give up phones because it's an issue and all that. One of the greatest things, though, is now I have a chance to share who I am now with some of the most broken people that I've met that were just like me. And that's an opportunity that a lot of people will never get to witness, to watch the growth and watch an individual that has struggled so hard and get to the moment where you see the difference and their life has changed. And it's an awesome opportunity. I thank Pastor for that. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Mason. This is actually my second go-around with the program. So the first time I came into the program, a very good friend of mine introduced me to Pastor, and I was there about 9 months. And I came into the program thinking that, I was going to have this big aha moment that God was going to fix everything right away. And he did. He gave me everything I ever prayed for. Gave me my family back. I got clean, sober. I didn't think that was possible. And so I moved out early, okay, and I moved back home, and come to find out that I wasn't as strong as what I thought. I went back to my old occupation, went back to my old home and everything, and old friends and all that. It was a mistake. It was a terrible mistake. I feel like I kind of, spit in God's face a little bit, And I'm stubborn, so I lived it, to the very last second, to where I didn't have any food, I didn't have a home, I didn't have, really anything to look forward to. I lost my family, because of my drug addiction and the way I was acting and everything, all my friends turned and ran for me, and I wanted to run for me, I didn't like who I was or anything. And I called Pastor Case, and I told him, I was like, Pastor, can I come home? I'm ready to come back home. And he welcomed me back in, open arms, didn't even hesitate. And if it weren't for this program, there is no doubt in my mind I would either be in prison, or dead, probably dead, because of all of the usage. I'm a dual addict. I have lots of addictions, not just one. I can't put my finger on one of them, but being in the program and being around like-minded people, they've taught me to be accountable. They've taught me how to be employable, responsible, that your worth is more than just what you do for a job, what you do, for, yourself and other people. And the reason why I made that phone call is, it was the Lord, and he was like, you need to go back and finish what you started. And thanks to Pastor and this program, it's given me my life back. It's taught me how to live differently, and through everybody in the program, right, from the top on down, we all learn and grow with each other, and that's what it's all about, us learning and growing in Christ. That's all I got. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. My name's Christy. I've been in the program for 2 months, so I'm a newbie. When I met Pastor David, I was a very broken person. I was broken way before drugs came into my life. And my life has changed dramatically. I have changed. I grew up in Topeka. I'm the oldest of 3 children. My parents were married for 49 years until my mom died of lung cancer. And when my mom died, I believe that the glue of our family disappeared, or so I thought. I'm realizing now that God is my glue. God keeps me together. But I didn't know that back then. And a lot of things happened in the 5 years that my mom's been gone. None of it very good, to be honest. But I'm here and I'm alive, and I'm with a group of people that care about me. They love me, they're teaching me about God, and I'm learning that God loves me, that I'm an important person, that the lies that Satan tells me are not true. And I'm very thankful to be here with my family. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Charlotte, and I speak with an accent. I'm from Sweden, so you got to bear with me there. I came into the program 15 months ago, being an alcoholic. Since I came into the program, I have never thought of myself as an alcoholic because it was a different road I had to be on. My problem started when I was 23 in Sweden. I went to the university, moved into my own apartment, and was stalked. Someone tried to break into my apartment. Someone followed me when I went to buy milk. Someone followed me when I went to the bus stop. Was waiting when I got off the bus at night. So since I was 23 years old, I've always looked over my shoulder. And that's when I started to drink, to numb the fears. Going to counselors, go and talk to pastors ever since. And people, they ask, so when did you start to drink? Oh, when I was stalked. Okay. And how's your relationship with your mom? Has usually been the discussion. And the whole stalking, what the stalking did to me has never really been brought up or discussed in any counseling or with pastors ever since. And that's a long time because, I'm old. And was married, got married, moved to the United States, had children, The alcoholism has gone in waves, but at times, not being brave enough to deal with the emotions, with the fears, just being frozen in something and not wanting to deal with it. So I was the kind of drinker who would drink so I would fall asleep, so I wouldn't have to deal with it. And then as my two daughters grew older, said, you got to go to rehab, and you look depressed, and you got to figure this out. So I did a couple of times. Never really had any luck with that. Then my husband brought me down, talked to David Case, because he had been out and presented about the program, just like we do today, out at Fremont Lutheran, where I belong. And my husband said, you need to go down and talk to Pastor Case, because this may just be it. This may... So I did, and when I started telling my story again, of course, so when did you start drinking? Well, when I was stalked. Oh, yes. He's the first person who ever listened to me and said, oh. All of a sudden, I was like, he believes in me. I'm not crazy. So I started by commuting to McPherson from Lindsborg every day for about 2 months, and then decided I have to move into one of the houses. And it has been 15 months now, and it's been a really good journey. Like I said, I don't think about it as much, haven't thought about it as dealing with alcoholism as much as rewriting my hard drive. Because I feel like when I think back to it, I went to counselors here, I got a floppy disk, I'm old, we did floppy disks back then, and they weren't working that well. And then you go to the next one, and then you graduate, you get a CD, and so forth. And I think that the last time when I was in rehab for about a month, I probably got an external hard drive. But that's not what I needed. I needed to work on my hard drive. And through the program, I've been able to do that, to rewrite that hard drive, to deal with a lot of it. One thing that came up as I've been working through the fears of being stalked and what that did to me was also that because I grew up in Sweden, when I was little, my parents, of course, when I was happy, sad, hurt, injured, whatever, we dealt with things in Swedish. Swedish was the language I started to pray to God in. And then as I moved here, and I raised my daughters, they were raised bilingual, so we spoke Swedish at home. And of course, many times when they got hurt then, I was the Swedish language provider. We dealt with things in Swedish because I spoke Swedish with them. But a lot of times you got to teach VBS or Sunday school or something, it's all in English. And it really wasn't the language that I connected best with God in. So once I walked through this, I had to go back to my native language and start praying and conversing with God in Swedish. And it has made the world of a difference, and I'm so grateful for the program for that. Thank you.
My name's Joe. I'm an addict and an alcoholic. I started injecting methamphetamines at 15 years old, and it led down a long, dark road. I've been in several programs. I've been in inpatient treatment 10 times and several halfway houses. None of them quite like Omega. Omega, it's faith-based. They bring God in our lives. We go to classes every day. We speak about God every day, and it's something I needed. About 3 years ago, I was doing meth. I was losing my kids. I lost my home. I was homeless a lot, and strange things started happening in my life that I couldn't explain. And a lot of people told me, you're on meth. You're hallucinating. And God was talking to me. God was speaking to me. He was trying to bring me in. And about 3 o'clock in the morning, I went to a church. There was a cross outside the church, and I kneeled down and I just started bawling, and I gave my life to God. And ever since then, He's put me in places that that, you know, is involved with him, that speak of him. And the Omega Project is, there's nothing but love and God in there. I actually, almost a month ago, I relapsed in the house, and I had a lot of shame, you know, about it, and they did nothing but love me and pray for me and welcome me back in with open arms, saying, "We love you, we're here for you," and you don't get that anywhere, you know, but with God. And it's a really great program. I continue to go to classes and just I learn about God every day, and it's going great. I love it. It's good. Thank you.
Okay, I guess the other two are not sharing, so hey, we have a little bit. I can either talk some more, which I'm quite capable of doing, but you may prefer not. So let's go to a time of Q&A. What do you want to know, and if there's a particular person you want to hear from or whatever, but just ask some questions here.
Raise your hand, and I'll bring the mic to you, and then we can all hear.
We have one.
What's the application process, and are there any requirements that you have that have to be met for acceptance?
Well, we do have, in terms of we have to be concerned with the safety of our people. So there's a few things that we rule out, but very few. The application process, we've got a written application. They have to fill that out, etc. But the application process is really pretty simple. It's one question. Are you willing? And I generally, me, but occasionally someone else, but generally I sit down with them and I ask them 15 different ways, one question. Are you willing? What if it means giving up your cell phone? Are you willing to be accountable for your time? Are you willing to, you know, and really what it comes down to, one of the mantras that's out there in our culture is, well, you don't know me. Richard alluded to it. Well, you don't know me. Here's the real truth. Scripture's pretty doggone clear in Proverbs 21:2, Proverbs 16:2. Every way of a man is right in his own eyes. The one who doesn't know you is you. You will believe your own ego. You will believe your own intentions. And so for you to actually start getting better, you actually have to start hearing the people around you. I talk about God's gifted me, and I can literally give me 2 or 3 minutes and I can start telling you a great deal about you. Just because of the discernment and etc. And I literally in group will go person to person on some particular days and just go boom, you know. And if you're on the other end of that, it's not fun. But there's one person in the group that I can't do that for. We are all blind to self. And so one of the big things there. And so really the number one question that I'm asking is, are you willing to listen? Are you willing to trust? Are you willing to take the appropriate steps you need to take in order to get better?
Referral sources?
I get phone calls virtually every day. I mean, that's part of why we've expanded our numbers so ridiculously. My heartbeat is that not one should be lost. And so I'm dealing with phone calls now. The sad part is that question, are you willing? A lot of people, by the time you flesh that out, the answer is, nope, not willing. And I have learned that you don't fight with that. Not willing is not willing. So when you are willing, call me back. Until then, I hope you do well. You may, and Mason's testimony highlights this. Mason hit a point where I'm not willing to live without my family. I'm not willing to, etc. And literally every single person in his house looked at him and said, "You are not ready. Don't do it." I said the same thing to him. I mean, literally every person. He's like, and he basically looked at us and said, "Nope, I'm gone. I'm fine." And so that "are you willing" statement is huge. And of course, Mason hit a point where he realized that no, he wasn't as fine as he thought he was, and said, "Can I come back and finish what I started?" "Sure you can." So.
Okay, so churches are aware. I mean, when I said referral source, I guess I mean, is it strictly word of mouth?
Here's the deal. We have never advertised anywhere, anytime, any way, except things like this. I mean, we come out and we share about the program just because, for the most part, we're overwhelmed with applicants. So I'm not out there beating the drum trying to find bodies. But yes, if you know someone and you want to send them our way, send them. I mean, we will do our best to absorb anyone, anyway, anyhow. I mean, that's our heartbeat. That's who we are. But I got my hands full, so I'm not out there going, "Would you all find somebody and send them our direction?" It's like I get so many phone calls. It's overwhelming, and so, We actually are not. We just opened our women's center, which meant that we've actually just added a bunch of positions here within a very short period. So we actually have an opening or two, a couple openings on the men's side, and we actually have several openings on the women's side. A, because we opened the women's center, which added a number of positions. B, we just kind of at the exact same time, which we didn't plan, we had a number of women graduate/move out in a positive way. So we actually have quite a few openings on the women's side right now and a couple openings on the men's side.
Children, and I'm not talking about treatment
at this
for
point,
children. Can they come with their parents?
At this point, we don't do. And again, if you're talking the higher level addict does not need kids. Okay, now, they're allowed to visit on the weekends. We help families restore. In fact, two of the women, 4 of the women that moved out, that's the reason they moved out, is to be able to get back into apartment. And what we're seeing happen more and more now, even though they move out, they're staying involved with classes, they're staying accountable as if they were in the program, and that works. Now, the problem is once they move out, it's a roll of the dice whether or not they stay accountable. Because invariably, as soon as that they get that little bit of distance, they lose the accountability, and as soon as you lose the accountability, are you going to get better? And someday we do hope to add apartments where we would, and it sounds crazy, but we would own them with a key to them so that we can walk in and check and et cetera. You need that leverage with people in order to help them get better. You need that leverage of, do you want to still have a place to stay? Because if you don't have some level of leverage, a lot of times people, it's just too easy, like, "I'm better, I'm fine, don't need you, I'm out of here." And so we do want to get there at some point, but right now the program is primarily towards the individuals.
And I'm going to let Patty follow up, and just to provide a little context, Patty is a district judge for Reno County.
Okay.
So she has vested interest in these questions. So just to give you some context, now you can change your story if you want, but
And certainly I want others to be able to ask, just wave at me. I could ask questions for hours, probably.
McPherson knows us, so in terms of the judges and et cetera, I mean, it's,
I'm just trying to get a feel for this concept, this program versus others. Let me back up. Let me ask my next question real quick.
Okay.
Accountability? Any kind of testing?
Yes, we do. We do drug testing. Obviously, if you don't do testing, you can't keep a house safe. And by safe, I mean clean. So We actually don't do just because of the cost. Richie is a great illustration. Richie can smell alcohol miles away. So all he has to do is walk in the house. I mean, we do not have to breathalyze in that house because we have Richie there.
Okay. Wait a minute.
We do the BAC, and we do drug test. A normal in my house, if I get a faint whiff of it, I'll do everybody. Maybe not UA everybody, but I will breathalyze. If I think I need UA, I will UA. We are huge on accountability. You know, I want to know where you're at, where you're going, and who's going to be there. Because if it's not safe, I don't like it. You know, number one, their sobriety is my number one concern in my house. Because if I can't help you get through it, then your rate of survival goes down very much. So, I mean, we have instances, but we are a mercy program too. So the person that does drink or does use, we don't say, you're gone, you're out of here. That's not who we are. You know, we have to show that love to get that love back. And we're willing to say, we're going to walk this through. First time you use, we're going to walk this through. The second time you use, we're still going to walk this through. The third time you use, there's going to be some more consequences, but we're going to walk this through as long as you're going to walk with us. But if you stop and refuse to walk with us, you tie our hands. You know, we're not willing to give up so easy. We're going to take that next step, every step with them. And that's why I say, what are you willing to give up to not be who you are anymore? That's what we're willing to do. So.
Let me tag team with that in terms of when he's talking about that are you willing? When a person uses, many times, not always, but many times you're able to identify the cause. Once you've identified the cause, then you're able to, and this is kind of my job, and it's frankly, I call it diagnosis because that's probably the best word. I'm able to diagnose a person, say, okay, if this is the cause, this is what you need to do to get better. So now the are you willing becomes very specific. In many cases, it is give up the cell phone, but in most cases, frankly, the answer is trust. Particular situation, you know, sometimes there's a heavy dependency with past relationships or with whatever. I mean, there's just, you're able to identify. One of the people said about shame. Okay, if your core issue is shame, then these are the steps that you will have to take in order to get better. If your core issue is perfectionism, then these are the steps that you'll have to do to get better. If your core issue, and if you understand, I'm not putting it in the typical drug alcohol context. I'm putting it in a heart spiritual context, but there's a level of science that we're employing that's involved with this. It's not just, well, just read your Bible and you'll get better. No, it's, okay, here's who you are, here's what you're doing and what you're dealing with. Now, here are the specific steps you will need to take. Are you willing to take them? The issue is not have you used. The issue is, are you willing to do what you need to do to get better? And frequently after a person is used, and we really tighten the screws down at that point, their answer is no, not willing. Bye. I mean, it's not have you used, it's are you willing to do what you need to do to get better? And sometimes it does take a couple of instances for us to start figuring out, here's the right diagnosis. Here's what's causing you to use. So, I mean, we take responsibility along with the person. If we're not able to help them see and find what they need, you know what? It may take a couple runs at it before we help figure out and say, all right, here's what you need to do to get better. But that's what we're continually working at. Leave the pew.
I would say that I relapsed in May of last year, and I've been living in the house for 3 months, and I thank God for that, because I think that was the best thing that happened to me. I tried to drown all the fears and emotions and everything again, but I was in a safe environment. I was in the program. It had a lot of impact in my personal life. But the fact that I was in the program, I had to cry my tears, and I cried a lot of tears. It was just, I had to deal with the fears of the stalking, a lot of personal things. It was basically 2 months of never smiling. I was just crying the whole time. So call it the tsunami. I mean, it was just like a wave. It just overwhelming. Could not stand up, could not walk. But I would not have gotten to where I am. And that is the thing that never happened when I went to rehab. I never got through that wall. And I could walk through that safely and be joyful in my walk in the program.
If you want to go to the word diagnosis, she had spent 30 whatever years basically numbing / killing off her feelings. And basically she came to me and goes, I'm feeling this, what do I do? And I said, cry. She loved that. She was like, you mean it? No, there needs to be a cleansing, there needs to be a trail of tears and etc. And a week later, I'm still crying. What do I keep crying, you know? And for her, she had 30 years of suppressing emotion that she had to walk back through those 30 years of suppressing emotion in order to get better. And it took about a 2-month, didn't you say, about a 2-month period of high-level emotional trauma, being supported in that, being encouraged in that. That was her quote-unquote diagnosis. And so it's like, no, you need to keep walking this out, and it did bear positive fruit. So,
I think, John, do you have the... John Yoder has the mic.
Could you touch on how this program would function or look like in another community other than McPherson?
Well, we're still playing that out. I'm hoping over the next year, which is the time frame to get this, I'm hoping to get the video technology where we actually can do the language I know is GoToMeeting. A kind of a thing where we can actually, I mean, class will be conducted and they will be there and a part of us and us a part of them and etc. So that we're actually doing live interactive classes via video. The other people in the program can teach a lot of my materials and be incredibly effective. Richie is an example of being incredible as a leader. I mean, so many people are doing so many of the pieces of what we do, and a lot of that can function without me. But the diagnosis piece right now, for lack of a better word, is so far we haven't really been able to duplicate that in anybody. So if I'm able to be doing some video classes with the people here, that's going to be helpful, and then there will be a house leader here, and there will be some of the materials and etc. So the rest of it functions, you know, well. But that one particular piece, for me to be able to have some connection, etc., we're hoping to have the video piece in place. So.
My question was regarding the funding. Where do you get grants? Is it supported in any way by the state? How do you keep it going?
Come live in my shoes for a week. Basically what I tell people to give an accurate picture is the first of the month, every month I wake up knowing we need $10,000 to show up from somewhere. And every once in a while we have 20 or 30 show up, and I can breathe for a month or two, you know. The reality is, from day one, we started this program with no money. God has not led me to, I suppose at some point I could just stop expanding and stop reaching out to people and wait and accumulate money so that I could actually at the beginning of the year go, wow, we have money to operate this year. But that's not what we've done. God at multiple times just continues to speak of it's time for another house, and we go get another house and money shows up. So no, we're highly dependent. We don't have a lot of grant funding. It's basically people like the people sitting here that God moves on at the appropriate time, and lo and behold, it shows up when we need it. And sometimes it feels like a little bit later than we need it, but no, that's pretty much how we walk through funding. They do. One big difference, that they do pay rent. It's not a standard treatment program where you come and you sit in class and etc. At a certain point, they get jobs, they pay rent, and so rent is a part of our funding. So.
Yeah, and they just to be really clear, you can go to their website, but they connect with jobs. They have a mowing business. They also connect with the Reuse It Center, the Mennonite Central Committee Reuse It Center in McPherson. One of the things when we talked to the city was, and you were there too, David, they thought about it. They thought, we asked them, well, what will people think? What should we do? And the city manager said, well, I think the biggest thing will be the NIMBY effect, or the NIMBY question. We're like, help us out. What's that? NIMBY means not in my backyard. It's good to do this, but not in my yard, not in my backyard. So they were concerned that there would be residents like that. What can you speak to that in terms of not in my backyard? Of course, we fear whatever we fear.
Well, if you don't do what we do well, that's a high-level concern. And frankly, that's a nightmare, and I buffer that word, but that I go to bed with every night. Because if we don't do what we do well, it could be a negative in the neighborhood. But we have a good track record. We have a good history, very minimal arrests, etc. And here's the answer that I will give you. Two answers. Number one, I had a woman who came to me and was like, I won't feel safe if that comes into my neighborhood. And I looked at her and said, tell me where you live. And I happened to know where she lived. And she was like, and I go on walks and it just, etc. And I just won't feel safe in my neighborhood. And I said, do you realize that there's 3 drug houses within a block and a half, 2 blocks of you? And it was kind of like, oh. And my number one answer is, it already is there. You just don't know about it. So would you rather have a place where it's being monitored and it's being worked with and it's being taken care of? Or would you rather have the place that you absolutely know nothing about? And again, like I say, our track record is extremely good. So,
through my addiction, I've noticed that it's peer pressure that starts us getting involved with the drugs and alcohol. So, what we've done is, what the program does for me and everybody else, is it takes you out of the streets and it provides you with a whole new group of friends. Okay, and these friends are doing the right thing. Granted, there's going to be 1 or 2 that's going to try to veer off, but the house keeps us together. Like Richard said, he can smell it a mile away, but we all come together every day. We live together, and we're trying to do the same thing. So that's kind of how it works. I mean, I love it.
The other part of the answer, if our houses didn't exist, and you take that same group of people and extrapolate it, I would almost guarantee you that the number of crimes that particular group would have committed would have been in the thousands.
But instead, last year alone, 6,700 hours of volunteer hours were put in.
Is actually over 7,000 volunteer hours. Yeah, it was. We broke the 7,000 barrier. Our Omega people donated over 7,000 volunteer hours back into the community last year. So.
And I assume that in terms of cost, it's probably a lot more cost effective to have houses like this than to incarcerate.
Let me give you some numbers that are staggering. And I'm shooting low ball here. Joe over here said he'd been to inpatient treatment 10 times. Lowball numbers for that tends to be around $20,000.
For 10 times.
For 10 times.
Yeah.
So, stand up and tell, smile at these people and tell them you just cost them $200,000. We need from the community, now this doesn't pay for new houses, okay? But we need from the community around $3,000 per bed per year. Treatment is 20 grand plus, typically, for 1 month. We need from the community, supplement rent and et cetera, $3,000 per year. Think about those numbers. Think about the number of dollars that are not being charged in the court system, that are not. I estimate that our program is saving the taxpayer literally millions. I said millions every year. We need 100,000 plus to operate, but we believe that we are bringing at least $10 for every dollar that's expended, at least. It's just reality in terms of the numbers. So.
Well, man, we could keep on talking, and we do want to keep on talking, but we need to also get ready for our worship hour. David will be preaching during the worship hour, and I wanted to just touch, since I have the last word, just want to touch on the comment that sometimes you need to speak the language, your heart language. And she was talking about Swedish. When I worked in Bolivia, we worked with Low German-speaking Mennonites who could also speak Spanish, but finally the doctor said, we can only take them so and so far, and then we need to speak the heart language, where you pray, where you interact with your parents, and where you developed relationships. And that really connected with me, too. And in a lot of ways, that's also what you're doing, whether it's English or not. You are looking at what is the heart language that needs to be spoken to connect. So think about that, too, within your own lives. Where do you speak? What is the language of your heart? How does it need to be spoken to? And how did this speak to your heart today? Thank you very much. Let's give a hand. And there are materials here. There are sign-up sheets. You want to say anything about them real quick?
Just real quickly, we do have a prayer team that we send out requests to. You have to sign a confidentiality agreement because we do use names, etc. I want you to be able to know the people. I want you to be able to connect with the people if you actually want to, and etc. But we've got a prayer team sign up. There's a confidentiality. There's a newsletter sign up. We send it out every other month to every quarter. You can get email version or you can get paper version, etc. So there's some sign-ups. I have some books, some different materials that we use in the program. So if you're interested in any of that, come by. Oh, and now these are also available. It's just a brief history of the program. Again, you just catch one of these people and you can get it if you're interested.
All right, let's gather back to worship at 2 minutes.